Welcome back to another episode. I'm so excited about today's guest, Gabe Garcia, founding partner at DJR García Law. Gabe has been a trusted legal advisor to the leading brands in the rapidly growing health and wellness industries. An expert in corporate, regulatory, and tax issues, he also counsels boards of directors, charitable foundations, and nonprofit corporations. Prior to launching DJR Garcia, Gabe served as general counsel for Natura, a vertically integrated cannabis campus in Sacramento, where he led efforts to acquire 21 licenses. Thank you, Gabe, for joining me today.
Thank you, Savannah. I appreciate you having me.
So give me a little bit of your background, just a quick overview of it and kind of what got you into the cannabis industry.
Sure. I'm originally from Northern California. I'm a 15-year practicing attorney. Prior to getting into cannabis, I did a lot of work with healthcare clients, specifically community health centers and federally qualified health centers. And those particular clinics need to have and also a state license issued by the California Department of Public Health. And so as I saw the state law regime unfolding for how we were going to regulate cannabis businesses, I really felt like what I was practicing there and some of the issues that affect clients in the healthcare space would translate to cannabis. And in fact, we're working on a white paper here at DJR Garcia, the top 10 things that cannabis operators can learn from licensed healthcare providers, because I do think there's some synergies there, and the cannabis industry as a young industry can learn from the healthcare industry in California that is a bit more mature and very highly regulated.
No, absolutely. Well, what is some legal advice you could give to someone wanting to start a legal cannabis business, specifically in California?
Sure. I always tell people that you really want to get yourself set with a professional team. I mean, a lot of founders are, driven by like maybe what their brand and their product offering might be, and that's fantastic. But this is California, and being a business owner in California is already hard enough. And the cannabis compliance at the local and the state level makes it even more difficult. So you absolutely need to assemble a team. There are four particular roles that I would think are critical to any cannabis enterprise. It's an attorney, a CPA, accountant, a compliance manager, and a human resources director. Now you could outsource all of those. You can hire all of those, as in-house employees. But all four of those are really critical to having a successful cannabis enterprise because of just the volume of laws and regulations that those four individuals would handle. I mean, the CPA a bit more on the tax and accounting side, but as well as anybody that doing cannabis taxes, both the income tax side because of 280E, but also the cannabis tax, the excise tax, all of the cannabis specific taxes that CDTFA collects is also complex. So that is something that I always recommend to clients, mostly because without those individuals, if you're trying to do that stuff yourself, you may create more work, or you can commit an error that is sort of a bet the company error that's tough to dig yourself out of.
Taxes are such a nightmare in general. Can't even compare them to cannabis taxes, because it's almost you're set up for failure to make a mistake if you don't understand what you're doing. I've been there. We've all made those mistakes, but it's part of learning. And I definitely think all of the above things you mentioned are so important to the foundational layout of your business, because you can have a really cool brand, like you said, but if it's not legal and you're not doing any things within regulation, then it's basically not worth anything at that point because of how many fines that can get slapped on you. With that, what would be the difference between a regular business and a cannabis business in California, if you could lay out the specific differences between them?
Sure. So a good example, one of the things we're going to address in our white paper is you're really bound by the specific parcel of real estate that you choose, right? So many jurisdictions that allow commercial cannabis operators are going to force you to get a conditional use permit, a CUP, under an entitlement process. So you have to select a location, make sure it's within the properly zoned area within the city or county where you can conduct this business, then go through that entitlement process and be approved before you even submit your cannabis license applications with the jurisdiction and with the state. If you want to expand or you want to move where you're located, you don't like your landlord, or it's not good foot traffic for your dispensary, it's a monumental hassle. Mm-hmm. So that, you know, if you own a hair salon or a taqueria or your own consulting business, you have a lot more autonomy and freedom with how your business, the actual infrastructure and the location of your infrastructure can move. You don't have that luxury in cannabis, and you have to think several moves ahead. You have to think months in advance before you change your mind or before you expand. That's just a one tangible example. You know, I talked about a compliance manager. When I worked with Natura, I was in-house legal counsel, but we had a compliance manager, and she was sort of the bridge between the legal department and what's going on out on the floor. So whether it's, you know, whether it's your grow room, whether it's your manufacturing plant, whether it's your distribution warehouse, the lawyer involved may know the law and the regs, but how that practically applies to your employees coming in, the products that they're touching, how they move them, how metric is tracked, you know, on California track and trace. Those are all cannabis specific business issues that other non-cannabis business owners don't have to think about. Now, cannabis business owners have all of the same duties as an employer that regular businesses do, which is why HR function is so huge. You know, we've got really strict wage and hour laws. We have the types of also creates high burdens of compliance for employers, and that applies to any business. And it's not necessarily the most intuitive set of rules. It changes year in and year out. So having a human resources director that stays on top of those, that meets with employment counsel or attends various webinars. Usually they do them at the end of each year, because January 1st, there are a new set of rules and laws that roll out. Things like that. If you miss it and then an employee comes back and says, you missed this and I want to sue you, then you are now paying for lawyers to defend yourself in a employment in the first place. So those are some ways that they're different and some ways that they're the same, and yet you can see the amount of work that it takes to stay on top of it. You froze on me.
You were freezing too. I was like, oh gosh, what's going on? I know. Tech. But to go on that unpopular opinion, but I love HR, so I'm so happy you brought that up. I actually worked in the HR department at a biotech company called Cepheid when I was in college, and I loved it. I'm really organized. I love paperwork, which is like insane, but I really enjoyed it. And once I worked in a company that didn't have HR, you kind of realize how important it really is for employees, and kind of like it helps me with like my well-being to be an employee and have HR to go to. It was someone you could confidentially speak to about like concerns or things that may have happened at work without repercussions on you. So I'm really happy you brought that up. I love HR.
I mean, look at everything that changed with COVID-19. So that is happening in real time, and you need somebody that's tracking all of that stuff, because there's brand new, you know, typically there's a grace period for employment laws to go into place, and you might have 6 months and then you update your handbook. But what happened last year with COVID was all in real time. adapting, notification, things like that. You need somebody that's tracking that like on a daily basis. And if you're trying to worry about your grow or expand sales or other things like that, it's going to be hard to do both well.
No, yeah, no, definitely. Not having HR is a really good way to get sued. So, on that note, legal costs can definitely add up, as we were just speaking about. What is some advice you have for those looking for legal advice that have it on needed on a budget, really?
Yeah, I would work with your counsel and explain your startup and see how they can accommodate a fee sensitive client. Flat rate arrangements per project are pretty common in the consulting space. And I think you're starting to see lawyers, at least ones that are astute to the, I've been doing that for a while because I understand that lawyers are expensive, but you also want your early legal work to be done and done correctly without worrying on every time you pick up the phone if the meter is running. So early on, arranging either discrete deliverables at a flat rate, or if you think that a monthly retainer would be a good way to have a predictable legal spend hit your budget each month, you could talk to your counsel and say, hey, we would love, to have all of our legal needs taken care of for this amount per month. Can you accommodate that? Or if you can't, what could you do for that set amount? And obviously, if there's a lawsuit, or if you acquire another brand and there's a major transaction, something like that is outside the ordinary course of what you might need from your corporate counsel, and that might be a special arrangement or a special hourly rate. But if it's looking at contracts, if it's working with HR, if it's working with the compliance manager, the things that you're going to need to do on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis, and you would like attorney support on it, you should talk to your counsel and make sure that you can find a way to have it hit the budget. And another reason that attorneys might be open to that is because it's a steady source of income and you can use it for training purposes. If I know that I'm only charging a client X amount per month, and I want to get a young associate to learn new laws and regulations in cannabis without it costing my client anything. Maybe it's just a paralegal, somebody that can help me. I can train them. The client gets the benefit of a high attention of service, and yet they're going to spend the same because that's been pre-negotiated. And like I said, paralegals, if it's filings, all the little nitpicky filings that you might have, like the LIC 027, when you have, any kind of change in a financial interest holder, and you're adding a new owner of the business, these forms have to get filed with the BCC and the other regulatory agencies. If you don't have somebody in-house and you want to outsource that, maybe your lawyer isn't the best person to do that. You don't necessarily need a lawyer doing it. A paralegal at your lawyer's office might be 1/3 of the cost in hourly rates as your attorney. And you could ask, hey, can we shift some of these tasks, these clerical and filing tasks, to your paralegal? And only when I need like the true strategy or legal analysis will we use the attorneys at that time. So being open and transparent with your counsel about how they can work with you so that it hits your budget in a more predictable way is a good way to approach it.
It's always so important to just communicate, because I always say if you don't ask, you'll never know. Worst case, they'll say no. And you'll find someone eventually that'll say yes or be willing to work with you. It might be a little bit of digging, but it's certainly worth it. My last question is, what are some things people can do to prepare for their business venture prior to spending a bunch of money?
I think this is a great question. So I'm a golfer, so I kind of liken this that in that sport, because the ball isn't moving, you have full control over things like your stance, your setup, your pre-shot routine. So once you hit the ball, that's a different story. But pre-shot is 100% in your control. And it's the same thing in business. Before you launch, there are certain things that you can do that are in your control and don't cost you money. So educating yourself on the industry, whether it's the historical background or the specific vertical that you want to get into in cannabis, do a deep dive on that. Like, you will always be a better business owner and entrepreneur the more you educate yourself. The second would be to explore your network, to find mentors and gather tips and tricks. Like we talked about, asking people that have gone before you what they learned from their experience and having them share so you can avoid those pitfalls. That's, that might cost you a cup of coffee, or just have, a Zoom call like this and learn a bit more. I think building a business plan that will organize your thoughts and will help you study your market and assess your value proposition. And a lot of people are like, well, I don't like investors. Some investors don't even want a business plan, and some do. But I can tell you, putting the business plan together like I said, it won't cost you money. It will cost time and investment of resources, but it will organize your thoughts around why your business will be successful and some of the other things that you'll need in order to get launched. So this is before you have to even sign from your company. And I guess the last one I would say is, this often comes up in the business planning process as well, but to do a brain dump on your mission and values that could eventually lead to material for your branding. So we did this at DJR García, Deborah, my partner, and I, we sat down and we really assessed, like, what do we want this new firm to be about? What are our mission? What are our values? And having that helped us, develop some of the copy for our website, and it helped our brand designer come up with a great logo that fit that. And that's stuff you can do and commit yourself to before you hire those people, to just say, this is what I believe, or this is what our team believes, and this is how we want to tell the market. So those are some pointers I would say are all within your control before you even spend a single dollar launching your enterprise.
That's great advice. I wouldn't have even thought about the copy thing, because I'm always like scrambling to write up things, and it's so undervalued. Copy is so important. Having come from the communication and marketing space, it's certainly not easy to think of on the fly all the time. But thank you thank you so much for all of your advice today. I appreciate it so much. Thank you for coming on. It was a pleasure talking with you. How can people get a hold of you if they have any questions or?
Yeah, our website is djrgarcia.com. We're on most of the major social media outlets, LinkedIn, Facebook. We're on Instagram at DJR_Garcia, and on Twitter at DJR_Garcia. So, please reach out, connect with us. If there's topics you'd like to see us cover on those channels, we'd love to be a resource for the health and wellness industry.
And I'm going to list all of his contact information as well, and all of their handles, social media handles, things like that, on our website and on all of our Instagram posts. So they will all be there as well. Thank you again for joining today. I appreciate it. But yeah, I will talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks, Amanda. I'll see you around.
Thanks, Gabe.